Cellar. Okay, it's on. It's working. Well, we'll see how this works. First off, the bad news. I can't transfer over my first couple from Facebook, so I'm going to go back over and look at them again, take some notes, and redo them for my YouTube channel, cover the same topics again. So some of you might find, oh, wow, I've seen this. And some of you might find tiny differences because I might do it better. You never know. So that being said, I have some things to talk about this time that stem from those. And the first thing I want to talk about is hit points and how they were intended and what they meant. And the first thing seems to be that people associate hit points with slicing and dicing and pieces of meat and drops of or pints of blood. And if you recall, in the original, we never got into hit location. We weren't into losing appendages or limbs or fingers or toes or ears or anything like that. That was something you might add into the campaign for color. But, okay, so so-and-so ran around with one ear for the rest of the campaign. It was just something that happened. So we didn't get into that because hit points weren't meant to be that. If they were, think about it. Anybody that had become a 5th or a 6th level fighter under the old system of promotion had suffered many, many times over wounds or hit point losses, we'll call them that, because they aren't truly wounds. Had they been truly wounds, by the time you get 5th or 6th level, you probably lost somewhere between 6 and 9 times your total hit points in aggregate. Some here on this adventure, some here on that adventure, some here somewhere else, whatever. So, and if they had been slices and dices and whatever, you'd be so scar tissue bound up that you wouldn't be able to hold a sword, you wouldn't be able to hold a shield because you couldn't move because of all the way everything healed. Hit points was your ability to evade a fatal blow. It was a combination of luck, skill, tricks picked up in fighting, agility, core strength, flexibility, litheness. It was all those things combined. And back then it was understood that it was all of those things. Today, to give you an example, a couple, 3 episodes on the Game of Thrones, Arya offered to spar with Lady Brienne. One of my favorite characters, by the way, Lady Brienne. And she had her little bitty short poniard, and Lady Brienne scoffed at fighting someone with a broadsword. And she said, that's okay, let's do it anyway, just for fun. And right off into the battle, a big whistling chop comes slicing through the air, and Arya bends over nearly backwards at the waist, and whoosh, it goes over her head. Now, in terms of hit points, that would have been a hit. In that, you would have expended some of that litheness, that luck, a trick that won't work again. Categorize it or characterize it however you will. Some of that ability, that core strength, has been drained. So some of your hit points have been removed. Now, we'll say that was a strenuous one, and maybe it would have been a hit for 12 points or more, double digits. Well, obviously, you can only take a couple of those. You're going to wear out. You're going to wear down. Your strength is going to fall. Your core strength is going to fail. And you're not going to make it quite in time, and you're going to get whacked. That's what hitting 0 was. You ran out of stamina. You ran out of core strength. You ran out of tricks. You ran out of dirty tricks. You ran out of skill, whatever. You took it. That's it. Now, think about this. You're fighting a giant who's got an enormous big hammer, and he hits you with it for 56 hit points, and you got 48. Well, obviously, that massive hammer negated all your tricks, all your skills, all your sets, whatever. It hit you so hard that nothing you could do was going to keep it from killing you. We went and rested between adventures. We always had a handful of characters active at any given time because somebody was adventuring or somebody was off on an healing up somewhere after an adventure. So, you know, somebody said, okay, we're going to do such and such. You look through and you said, okay, here's who I got. And you picked one out. And you went and you rested afterwards because you were recovering that core strength. You were recovering, you were in rehab, if you will. Again, however you wish to characterize it, that was the effect. You were going back to replenish your skills, get yourself worked back up into fitness. And if you had gone up a level, then in that healing, in that, you got those new points. And you look, again, characterize it how you will. It's something you learned from the last fight. It's something, many things you learned over the aggregates of the fights that you've been in. We didn't worry about going to train to get up a level. We figured it was OJT. When you qualified for that next level, you'd already done all the training you needed. Didn't affect your healing if that was in that case. But anyway, that's what hit points were. They weren't gobbets of flesh. They weren't quarts and pints of blood. They weren't limbs. They were just your ability to evade the killing blow. Obviously, the dragon breathes fire for 128 hit points. There's no getting away from dragon fire when you're within range, okay? Again, go with Smaug, go with the Game of Thrones and Dany's dragons, whatever. The fact remains that that is such an overpowering impact on your body that it's fatal. Okay, so that's hit points. I was asked about hirelings, which also leads, pardon me, pardon me, very impolite, I apologize. It also leads to me the humor in games. Because in my mind, humor and hirelings are they're irretrievably, irrevocably linked together, because I don't think we ever had a hireling that lived long enough that we even thought about giving him a name, which is, all of us readers of Knights of the Dinner Table know, you never give a hireling a name because it's a sure thing he's going to kill him, just like you never name the horse or the donkey or the mule or whatever, the burro. You never name them because sure enough, they'll die. Well, the only time we really used hirelings, and I say we, and this is the old Carbondale campaign that was back in the early days, and we were doing tests, you know, my guys didn't know it, but they were test guinea pigs for Gary. And we generally had wranglers. They handled our burros or our donkeys or our horses or something like that. And invariably they met horrible grisly ends at some point along the way. And so if you're playing a coherent, cogent campaign, word gets out, hey, you want to charge double if you want to come back from more than one adventure with these guys, because nobody ever seems to make it after two. You know, nobody's ever made a third adventurer. So the prices go up, and pretty soon hirelings just weren't available. And about that time, we figured if we couldn't haul it out, we weren't worried about it. We'd go back and get whatever it was later. So hirelings were very transient in my campaign development and my game development. I never really paid a lot of attention to them. In the books that I did and the writings that I did, we didn't deal with them much. NPCs, I thought, were much more important to the game, because NPCs were the dungeon master's guys. They were his thugs, his hit squads, his, go help those poor dudes get out of that horrible jam they got themselves into guys. They were the St. Bernard with the cask of booze around to go rescue these poor buggers who are lost in the maze. I thought NPCs were much more important than hirelings. Now, to go back to humor and gaming, one of my electronic signatures on one of the websites that I occasionally post on says, if you're not having fun, why are you doing this, or something to that effect. Well, I'm members on a lot of Facebook pages that I often go and read. I very seldom post on it because most of what I see on there is what I would consider to be rather childish and foolish. Why if you're not having fun, find another DM. If you're not having fun, find new players if they're running roughshod over you. Become a player, move around from behind the screen. I just don't understand if you're not. Why do we do any hobby? I don't fish because I enjoy the days I get skunked. I fish because every time I go out might be one of those good days when I catch a bunch and have a great time. I don't have the fellas over every other Wednesday night to lose at whatever we're going to play. I have them over to play whatever we're going to play, for having fun. Is it fun to lose? No. Still fun to play. When I'm playing with my buds or I'm playing with a bunch of new friends at a con, the play's the thing. I'm not Shakespeare here. I'm using it as in a verb, sense of the verb and not the noun. But the play's the thing. If we're not having fun, we're doing it wrong. Even back when I was a hardcore miniature player and the rules are complex and exasperating and frustrating, overall, when I came home, I look back and say, yeah, I had fun. I might have spent a good deal of it frustrated or whatever, but in essence, I had fun in the balance. I had fun. So have fun. We had fun at each other's expense often. You're not supposed to, but we often laugh when people do silly things. And there's a guy running around to us who will always be known as Hogbait, because he volunteered to run into the room with the two giant hogs. And we were like, they were like second, third level guys back then. And our idiot magic user chucked some concussive weapon of some sort, fireball, something in there, and fried the pigs and him. So he was known forever as Hogbait. We laughed our butts off when we realized what Neil had done. Hogbait didn't laugh his butt off. He was kind of ticked off because he lost a guy. But we sure laughed every time something stupid happened. Of course we laughed. We laughed at ourselves. We laughed at each other. Every time Deathless Bob died, and I've told Deathless Bob's story many times, kid that played in a youngster, not a college student, who played in our group, every week he died. It didn't matter. He never did anything dumb. He was just the unluckiest player I ever saw in my life. He was like the old Joe Blitzaflick in Superman, or the guy that ran around in the old Little Abner comics with the black cloud over his head. And sure enough, we laughed our butts off every time Deathless Bob met his demise again. He laughed with us. But if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right. Now, going from fun to let's talk about something that has a greater pucker factor than even being told that a boule just rose up out of the ground 25 feet in front of you. No, nobody wants to see that. Well, there's one other thing that has people quaking in their boots, if you will, and it goes back to hit points, and that's level drain. Nobody wants to lose a level that they spent 3 weeks, 3 months adventuring to achieve and then have it sucked away. So what is a level drain? Well, if you look at the monsters that have that ability and you look at the literature from which they spring, they talk about an otherworldly coldness with touch. They talk about having the energy sapped from their souls or from their inner being, their inner core, if you will. So Level drain destroys that part of your inner core, that newly acquired litheness, agility, flexibility, all those things that go into hit points that are all congregated in one rather amorphous point. The level drain removes those from you, and you have to do it again. Because, again, going back to the literature, most of the literature with these types of creatures, you're never the same again. You can heal back up, right? But you're never the same. You're never going to get back to where you were. You got to go a step back and start again. That's what's about level drain. Level drain is no big deal if you got a nice cleric in your group. But if the cleric's down, or you're playing without a cleric, which sometimes happens, or God forbid you split your party, well then you're in deep kimchi. There's no way about it. If they get to touch you, they're going to get it. Now, that's all they got to do is touch you. Luckily, the weak ones have a pretty high THAC0. It's pretty hard to touch you. The strong ones just reach out and grab you, and it's all over. I have an adventure that I've run many times at conventions that proves a number of things, such as parties can never resist a fancy skeleton without a skull. They'll invariably find the skull. Instead of talking to it first, they'll stick it back on the skeleton and release hell. And in this case, they release a lich who's really mad. He's hasted, he's angry, and he has a mace that every time it hits you, it drains a level. And so they invariably release the guards. The lich comes out. He stuns half of them to stand there so he can ride down on his nightmare going tink, 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 draining them of levels. I don't have much sympathy because in old school, it was all about acquiring information. And they asked the skull, hey, why are you disconnected? I already had it there in the side story that the skull would tell them that they gave their life to hold the guards, the wards that hold this thing into its sepulcher. And that to place it back, don't do it, don't do it. And too bad, TPK. That particular adventure ends up in a TPK about 5 times out of 6, or perhaps even 7 times out of 8. It's pretty ugly. And it's level drain and paralysis and all the worst things, the worst pucker factor you can think of. Even if they somehow survived it, of course, they're never the same. They've had levels drained. So level drain is a tool for the DM to occasionally remind the party that they are mortal, they're not invincible, and it gives their pucker ring a little practice every now and again on what it's like to draw up tight. Because high-level stuff that are hard to turn or can't be turned by your low-level cleric or whatever are run away to fight another day. Again, a pretender of the old school. If you're overmatched, run away. Now, there's a hireling that we used to get, but it's more of an NPC, because we'd go find an established mage who was, a little better than us that could take on this guy, or a cleric who was a little better that could turn these guys, and we'd hire them for a portion of the adventure or the portion of the proceeds or a flat fee, however we arranged it. And they would go, so they're technically a hireling, but really I would consider that an NPC. We used NPC specialists frequently. We'd hire a whole flock of 2nd or 3rd level fighters, and they became cannon fodder, but we paid the survivors well. So that kind of goes back, and it's a good thing this isn't being written, because I'd have to go back and redo that whole first paragraph now. Whereas with video, I can just let it go. Now, what I'm going to do here in a second is I'm going to stop this. I'm going to save it. Then I'm going to go to my guy who showed me how to do this, make sure I know how to do it and don't erase it again. because I've already raced one of these that was 24 minutes long. Try not to do that again. And then I will post it post haste. And then I will announce it on various websites and on Facebook on where you can find it. And hopefully this will become something I'm going to do every week or so whenever I get the urge, when I get feedback about, what about this, what about that. And every once in a while when I just get a bug up my butt or a wild hair up my nose to talk about some other form of gaming besides RPGs. Because contrary to popular belief, I do not consider myself primarily an RPGer. I know my reputation is established in that, but remember Dragon Magazine, I was into miniatures. I was into boards. I'm heavily into boards now. I don't D&D with my buds. We're probably too old to start one of those up. We tried a couple of years ago. The logistics were tough. Everybody's got families and family obligations. But we can get together twice a month for 3 or 4 hours to play some board games together. And I'll talk about board games someday, sometimes maybe. I don't know. Curmudgeon in the Cellar is going to be what I got a wild hair to talk about that time. No more, no less. Have a good game.